indeed a good morning slash afternoon slash evening to all of you. And indeed, it's a privilege for me to be the first speaker for the Jus Laboris Legal Summit of 2021. And more importantly, I'm very honored to introduce to you two distinguished guests working for TomTom, the well-known international geolocation technologies company with its headquarters here in Amsterdam, where I'm also broadcasting at this moment. May I introduce you to Birgit Woudstra, who is the product manager digital workplace and change lead for What. What stands, that's W at TT, working at TomTom. This is, by the way, the subject of today's interview. And may I also introduce you to Lotte Lotens, Senior Legal Counsel at TomTom. Very welcome to you both, and it's a pleasure to be able to interview you both on this interesting subject, how to organize your workforce in the future. But before I start asking you questions, perhaps a brief introduction on this important subject. We all know in the beginning of 2020, the world had to deal with a sudden lockdown, one country after the other. And as a result, most of us had to work remotely from home, and we have been doing that for roughly 1.5 years now. The concern of most employers in the beginning was, how is my personnel doing? How are they holding on? How are they keeping it up? And as it turned out, they managed to do that quite well. The employees actually did manage to keep it up, and the lockdown also showed possibilities and advantages of remote working. One important example is, of course, no more commuting time, or should I say no more waste of commuting time, I might add. Also, we are able to organize our own working day. A lot of people say that working remotely has improved their work-life balance, and so on. But of course, there's also a flip side to that coin. There are also concerns. For example, concerns about employee well-being after being isolated for a very long time. Concerns about not everyone's home situation being well equipped to have a home office. And sometimes, and by the way, also where somebody say that work-life balance has improved, others say quite the opposite. And sometimes it's just the simple things that we miss, like a cup of coffee with a colleague, or coincidental encounters with colleagues while working at the office. At this moment, there's a slow movement of people returning to the office. And this raises a lot of new questions, like, for example, what is hybrid working? Everybody's talking about hybrid working, but how do we define it as a business? How are we going to define it as a business? Or questions like, how many square meters of office space do I need as an employer in the future? Or what should the working place look like going forward, etc. TomTom saw this struggle coming very soon, actually. Right after the start of the lockdown of TomTom's Dutch headquarters in March of last year, they started investigating what impact this lockdown would have on the long run on their way of working. And this has resulted in a concept TomTom calls activity-based working, and a program referred to as What, working at TomTom. Before I ask my questions to Birgit and Lotte, you will first be able to look at a short movie introducing What to their personnel. Let's have a look.
Remember when we were spending most of our working time in the office? Sitting down at our desk for a very big part of the day. Emailing colleagues on the other side of the world, or sometimes even just a few desks away. Trying to focus or get things done while getting things done clearly meant something else to our desk neighbors. For many of us, working in the office also meant spending quite some time in long and sometimes frustrating commutes. Well, the world has changed. Work is no longer a place you need to go to, but something you are enabled to do. And this is what working at TomTom, or What, is all about. Together with your team and your manager, you'll be able to choose the work setting that is best suited for what you need to do and who you need to do it with to achieve your goals and TomTom's. Say you're working on a project that involves a lot of people. With What, you'll be able to organize a meeting in the office with the space to discuss ideas and decide on a perfect solution. Or you might have something important due by the end of the day and all of the noise just won't cut it. cut the noise out, and work from home so you can focus. That's the core of an activity-based working strategy, giving you the freedom of choice on where you work to achieve the best outcome. Activity-based working is not the same as getting as many people as possible to work from home, or to agree on a time that needs to be spent in the office. It's about organizing our work in a more productive and enjoyable way, creating the best circumstances for each activity, whether it's from home, the office, or even on the way. That's why our home workspace will play a bigger role than before, and it's why we wanted to support you in organizing it in the best way possible with the introduction of our new benefits. But there's more to it than that. We must also reconsider our office layout. Having desk after desk doesn't make sense anymore. So we'll be redesigning the office in a way that encourages connection and collaboration. It also means that we'll need an effective and secure virtual working environment with instant access to all the information we need wherever we are, as well as the right tools and behaviors to collaborate and connect with colleagues wherever they are to deliver on our vision. Create the most innovative technologies to shape tomorrow's mobility and contribute to a safer, cleaner, congestion-free world. By letting go of things that are needlessly fixed and adopting a full activity-based working strategy, we will improve our productivity, regain valuable time, learn new skills along the way, and deliver on our vision. So join us in transforming the way we work and make TomTom the place where you can achieve more.
Okay, after having seen this very interesting short movie, perhaps a first general question I would like to ask to you, Birgit and Lotte. What is perhaps, in addition to what we just saw, what's the rationale behind an activity-based working?
So, Philip, just like any other company, TomTom was confronted with this new reality due to the pandemic. And we closed our offices globally early because of health and safety concerns. And after that, we first focused on logistics, making sure that all TomTommers were equipped with the right setup to work remote. Although a lot of people had laptops, we still had around 600 employees working on desktops. And also, despite being a global distributed company, we weren't working remote on such a large scale. So we had to adapt. And during those first weeks of the lockdown, we learned that working remote didn't really impact our productivity. It stayed up. And we also learned that our work location wasn't as important as we thought it was. We discovered also the value of employee feedback. Maybe that's our biggest lesson. We did frequent pulse surveys amongst our employees. And we learned that there were employees that hated working remote. But much more of them were really loving it. And that's also what made us realize that this was a chance for us to reimagine the way of working at TomTom.
Okay, but what triggered TomTom to start working on the concept of activity-based working as early as they did? Because I heard when we were preparing this interview, I understood that this was already in March of last year. You must have had a sort of a crystal ball to look into the future. I remember people saying, how many weeks is this going to take? And here we are, 1.5 years later.
Yeah.
So what triggered TomTom to do it as early as they did?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, the discussion started really early, and we also proposed an initial plan to the board, and that was about working from home 2 days a week for specific roles in the company. But our board thought this was way too conservative and not really future-proof. And the board really wanted to seize the moment, and they gave instructions to come up with a plan to fully re-engineer the company to be more, they called it workplace agnostic. And that's the moment when our CHRO put a couple of people together in a team to work on this plan. And I was one of those people, and part of this team with colleagues that did not really know each other, never worked together before. We all had different backgrounds. Myself, I'm from IT, for example. We were also in different time zones, and we only had 2 weeks for this huge assignment. And what we did, we decided to run a design sprint to face this challenge. And in those 2 weeks that we had, we did a lot of internal research. We really took a deep dive into all the external material that is available. And then we formulated our vision. And that was all about empowering employees with flexibility to choose their work location. And we got a quick approval from the board on this vision. And then we installed our program. We also came up with the name What, and that was during the summer holidays last year. That's also when Lotte and I met. Lotte was heading one of our 5 work streams in the program, HR and legal. And next to that, we also had a work stream for technology, for future offices, for comms and culture, and learning and development. And we had a small core team managing the program together with all the work stream leads. We also installed 2 voice groups. We still have them. We have an executive voice group with 4 board members that direct the program on a more strategic level. And we also have a user voice group consisting of 35 employees who represent our workforce. And that group we use to validate and test ideas and deliverables. We also consulted the works councils on a regular basis. And we did all of this to make sure that our concept, our vision, would benefit both the individual employee as well as the company as a whole.
Okay, so it sounds a bit like putting together a lot of people with different expertises and sort of a pressure cooker, almost like a hackathon, where great things were started. TomTom has businesses in 30 countries worldwide. So my question, I guess, is, are you noticing any differences between countries? First of all, in the way they are responding to the lockdown, and second, in the way they are perceiving what? Are you seeing any differences there?
Yeah, certainly we do see differences. For starters, we really want to roll out what as a global concept applicable to all employees in the company, but we do accept that there are some local nuances. So, for example, the personal circumstances or home situation of our people in different regions, they vary. But also the market demand from our talent pool for flexible working in Europe and the US is much higher than in other regions in the world. And also maybe our South African office is a nice example. We have a small office base there. And we were evaluating the need for a physical office in that region. And then the topic of frequent planned and unplanned power outages was addressed. And among other things, this led to the decision of closing the office there, but instead offering a full membership to a co-working solution. And that makes it possible for the employees there to use a co-working space close to their homes, in case of immediate need for power or internet. And for them, this really is an ideal situation or solution. And for us, it still fits within our concept of offering flexibility to employees.
Yeah, well, that's interesting to see those differences. In one country, a lot of people in the office, and in the other, perhaps no office at all, or almost no office at all.
Yeah.
May I also challenge the concept of what a little bit? Isn't the concept a little bit too much based on good faith? And isn't it a little bit too much based on the assumption that employees are able to deal with their own responsibilities? I'm asking that because a lot of employers think that commitment takes a hit if people are working at home for a long period, or if the working place is close to empty for a long time. What are your thoughts on that?
I can take this one, Philip. So it's definitely correct. The concept is all about trust and responsibility. And just to provide some context, we have a global workforce. So for us, it's not uncommon in any way that our managers having a team spread out over multiple countries. So meetings were already often online. If I look at the HR team, I think it's spread over 20 countries. So it was not a completely uncommon practice for us. And that also implies we were already working on the basis of trust. Maybe not on this scale, but we were already had trust is one of our core values, also the 6 determined core values of TomTom. And during the lockdown, you mentioned in your introduction, everybody has proven that they can actually handle this responsibility. Everybody was challenged with the most difficult circumstances, being isolated, being at home with small children. There was so much going on, and people stepped up. So we feel that they have earned our trust. And it's not just about trust in our employees, but also really in our managers and their managing capabilities, because they play a central role here. They are responsible to engage with their teams, to check how is engagement going, how is productivity going, and if things are not going well, they are the ones who need to address this, have a discussion, and take action. So it's definitely also, I think, a huge responsibility for our managers. And overall, we're really happy. Like our engagement is really high within TomTom, and we've seen that the whole WAT program has been perceived like so well with every survey or employee poll we have. There were 1 million comments on how they appreciate this new flexibility. So we really feel like that we're going in the right direction. And just one thing I just wanted to add on your comment on lack of commitment. I think forcing employees to any concept, like forcing them to come into the office or forcing them to work from home, I think that is going to harm your engagement and commitment. I think people thrive by having a choice, and that's what we're trying to give them.
Yeah. So I guess that the managers play a very central role in this program, and are they? I guess that they are getting trained for that purpose. Huh? What types of trainings are you providing to the managers?
Yeah, so within the WAT program, we look at 3 target groups: employees, managers, and new joiners. And indeed, managers might be our most important audience. Because they are the ones to lead their teams through the whole transition. So we think that training is essential. And we developed a learning track, and we call it What for Managers, consisting of 4 different workshops, one on activity-based working, on location flexibility, and one changes and benefits of what. But the 4th one is called Team Alignment. That's our most important workshop. And we believe, and we also see that in our survey results, that having the discussion about hybrid working and how to apply it in your team is really helping our employees to get clarity, also to manage expectations, and it contributes to a mutual understanding about personal preferences from different people in the team. And we started with a soft launch of these trainings during lockdown. We were raising awareness. But now, at this moment, we are taking a more top-down approach because we really see that it has a positive impact, these trainings.
Yeah. So when we looked at the short movie, there was also a reference to things like homework allowance and a budget for the home office being part of what? Is TomTom using that to incentivize people to work from home as much as possible, or should I see that differently?
Yeah, Philip. So my work stream, as mentioned, the HR and legal introduced these 2 allowances also quite early. And I think our one-off home office allowance was introduced around September, and our monthly allowance was, which is more for your increased utilities, has been introduced as of the 1st of January of this year. And they're really meant to contribute to potential raised costs as a result of more frequent working from home, and of course ensuring our employee health and safety, making sure that everyone is comfortable. And of course, there's only so much we can control. We know that in some countries, people just have smaller houses, live with more people, etc. But we aim to at least facilitate that they can purchase good equipment for themselves and make themselves comfortable. But it's not by any means meant to either encourage people to work from home or work from the office, because we really feel, the WAT is about productivity, personal preference, where you thrive, that's supposed to determine where you work, and not by any means a financial allowance. So we have also explicitly took the decision not to change the allowance based on the number of days you're working in the office. So it's not like prorated or anything, because we feel that again would be a financial incentive, and also it can change. It can change per week, right? Maybe if I speak for myself, sometimes I'm in the office for 3 days a week. Sometimes I don't come in for 2 weeks. So it's definitely not meant to incentivize, just to help with the increased costs.
Yeah. Well, that's clear. When I prepared for this interview, I of course had a look at how other companies are dealing with this, and I read in the news the other day the approach of a company like Spotify, where people are able to choose between what they call the office mix and the home mix. The office mix is where people are allowed to work, say 2-3 days a week in the office, and the rest at home. And the home mix is the other way around. So you work at home all the time, unless it is absolutely necessary for you to come to the office. How does the TomTom program compare to that approach?
Yeah, so I think our approach is a little bit more flexible. During the whole creation of the concept, we listened to our employees, we listened to our talent pool, but we also, for example, looked at those 6 TomTom values that Lotte mentioned. And in those values are things like we build trust, we care, also we keep it simple. And yeah, based on that, we really wanted to remain the flexibility for our employees. So there are different reasons that can influence your work location. That can be that personal preference or your home situation, maybe your job role or a certain project or team that has needs. But even something as small as a neighbor going through constructions, that can make me change my mind about going to the office this week. So we believe that flexibility will create the utmost engagement and productivity. And besides that, what is also a way to distinguish ourselves from our competition with full trust in employee and manager capabilities.
Yeah, well, that's a good example. My neighbor is actually starting to do some construction in his home, so for sure I'm going to the office a lot more. But more generally, I would like to, I guess this is a question, Lotte, for you as legal counsel, and also a question actually to the audience. What I would like to ask you are 2 things actually. First, I would like to ask everybody's views on the fact that in some countries, like for example in the Netherlands, legislation is being either prepared or considered or perhaps even in place where employees are granted the legal right to work from home, or perhaps better, better said, to work remotely, excuse me. So the big question is, what does the audience think about granting employees the legal right to work from home? We have a poll to ask the opinion of the audience, and to participate, you can connect, and we will be very interested to hear your responses. So a couple of seconds before I ask Lotte's view on that, because I'm very curious. Okay, what waiting for the outcome. There's also going to be a second question that I will ask in a bit, and after that we will have a look at the results of the poll. But first, this first question: the legal right to work from home. What are your thoughts, Lotte?
Yeah, so in general, I support the concept of working from home in some form, and as such do not oppose of any legislation contributing to this. But I just believe that a legal right is not the solution. I think you need to decide as a company, you know, what do you want to be, what works best for you, and then you create a program around this. And we really believe that trust and ownership should prevail in that. create intrinsic motivation around this practice versus having people to enforce it by law, because intrinsic motivation is ultimately what keeps employees engaged and what prevents attrition and what attracts talent. And for TomTom, such a legal right would also take away from the flexibility. Let's say that somebody can enforce to work from home for 2 days a week, but if that doesn't match the activities they're engaging in, that's not helping the employee nor the company. And I think what is better is to have the flexibility as it can vary from week to week versus having fixed rules and rights. And I just really strongly believe in the market as well. Our talent pool, as Birgit mentioned, our talent pool is really asking for flexibility. And in order to get in the talent we need, we're a big tech company. There's a war on talent going on. We need to have such an offering, and we cannot wait for employees to join us. First of all, then they wouldn't join us, and then having to enforce anything by law. So I think it's not the right solution for us, but overall, I think in some really conservative branches, lines of work, maybe it can help at least have the discussion on how it can even benefit your company more remotely.
Yeah, well, I don't want to influence the people who have not yet given their opinion, but I'm modestly saying that I agree with you. I think that the Dutch legislator is, for example, for the Netherlands, is way too soon in initiating this. So I agree. What about the other piece of legislation that is already in place in some countries or being proposed in some other countries? It's, by the way, legislation suggested also by the EU Parliament beginning of this year, legislation granting the legal right to be digitally unreachable. Just a little bit of background, a UK study has shown that we are sending 200 billion emails each day, and 75% of them are being answered within an hour. That's quite impressive figures, and they call it workplace telepressure. So as a result of that, EU Parliament initiated this, and they suggested the legal right to be digitally unreachable. I know that in France there is legislation, in the Netherlands there is legislation pending. It's, by the way, a bit similar. It's not that the French droit à la déconnexion, it doesn't give the legal right to be digitally unreachable, but it gives the employer the obligation, a duty to consider, if you like. Once employees bring it up, they have to have an actual discussion about it. I also know that a couple of companies are already inserting that into their own policy, into their own way of working, like Orange, like BMW, like AXA, like Lidl. A question to the audience is, what do you think about the legal right to be digitally unreachable? Do you think that is a good idea or not? Again, you can use the QR code to give that answer. And of course, I'm again very curious to hear your thoughts on that, Lotte. So what do you think?
Yeah, so overall, I think it's a really important concept, right? There should definitely be time that an employee can switch off, spend time on his or himself, family, sports, going outside. So I think in general, again, I think the discussion is great that it's going on and is being acknowledged that too much pressure may be be put on employees, and especially I think in certain branches it will be a bigger problem than elsewhere. I think for us, it doesn't really fit within our concept of flexibility, because, like, as we're saying, like, you're flexible to come into the office or work from home. We also provide flexibility to determine like what works best in terms of hours to be most productive. Or if I look at myself, I have young children. It's not uncommon that I get a call that I have to pick one of them up because they're sick or something's going on, or a teacher is sick. And for me, it's great flexibility that I can then attend to them and maybe finish my work later, or a spare hour in the weekend or something. we also have engineers who like to sleep in, but are most effective coding all through the evening and night, and we don't want to dictate or at least put a stop on it and say like, oh, after 7 p.m. We don't want to see anything from you anymore. So so we give the responsibility, but having said that, it of course may happen that employees are taking on too much on their plate, or managers are pushing them too much, and that's why we also have like a great well-being program in which we really stimulate, like, people need to go offline, they need to exercise, go outside, and make sure they get enough sleep. I'm not sure the law is, again, I'm not sure a law is required. I also think, again, the market may catch up on you if you keep over asking your employees. At least in our sector, they will eventually leave, right? They have other employment opportunities. And we also see that, like, not only is the work-life balance now much more important for new generations, like our millennials are a famous example, but we also see it with our existing generations that, especially since the lockdown, work-life balance has become a much higher priority for them, and they demand some form of flexibility, but they also demand that they're not being over asked. So yeah.
So it's sort of a solution in between, in fact. So let's have a look at the poll results. Hopefully we are able to have a look at it, all of us. Let's see. Oh, that's okay. So the legal right to work from home, it's a 50-50. That's interesting to see. So yeah, it's a 50-50 answer. So that is interesting. Yeah. And what about the other question? Yeah, that's perhaps a small majority in favor of that one. So that's well, as you can see, there are a lot of so many people, so many opinions, and that is interesting to see. And of course, we are also as Dutch lawyers interested to see if it's going to if the law is going to make it in the end, the right to be working remotely. That's a very interesting development for us and for surrounding countries to see how that evolves. Another question for you, Lotte, is when I was preparing for this interview, I of course read a lot of reports from different institutions, from consultants, from employers associations, from trade unions, what have you. And some findings I would like to share with you and hear your thoughts on. First is, multiple reports say that a lot of people are still not feeling comfortable by going back to work. And that can have a variety of reasons. People who do not want to get tested or vaccinated, or the other way around, people who do not want to work with people who are not, who refuse to be vaccinated or tested. Or believing that the workplace and the workplace policy is not enough COVID-proof yet. How do you more generally think an employer should cope with that problem?
Yeah, so what we did, and I think what every company should do is gather data on this. So we have our employment surveys in which we also ask, have you been coming to the office already? If not, what's holding you back? So at least that gives us some insight in how big is this problem, right? What should we be addressing? What are the best means to address it? And I think, especially with workplace safety, we really have the philosophy that the manager should engage into conversations with all his team members, also around the topic of wanting to come to the office or not. And you should definitely take into account personal circumstances here. If somebody has lost a loved one due to COVID, or has underlying health issues, that's definitely something, of course, we're going to respect, and then maybe over time have again this conversation. And what we do try to stress in all our communication is that we take our health of our employees very seriously, and also as Birgit mentioned, like we've adapted all our offices, not only in the first instance, like to make them corona proof, but now it's all based on activity-based working, and it is really a safe environment for employees. So we try to take away the fear they may have around this. And if it's not the actual fear of getting sick, what's holding them back of sometimes coming to the office, yeah, that's also something that should come to the surface on the basis of such a conversation. So that's how we try to deal with it.
Yeah, and another report of the Dutch National Social and Cultural Planning Office, the Sociaal Cultureel Planbureau, states, that was an interesting for me to read, that in the future people are going to work from home less than what they are now telling their employer. I thought that was an interesting conclusion in that report, and the reasons for that, the report says, is that some people may fear to be seen as having less commitment by their manager by taking the chance to work from home. How do you look at findings like that?
Yeah. So first, it's quite funny because our finding is actually the opposite. So people indicated that they would be in the office more than they actually are. But I personally, but maybe Birgit has a different opinion, I think that's also because we're still in a transition phase and people need to get used to coming to the office again. It might seem like a first big step, and then once they start coming in, they see the value again, and they get, if I speak for myself, I get really energized by being around my colleagues again, and then that also helps me come in more frequently. So maybe that's subject to change, but we don't really recognize this conclusion yet. But I do think there is a valid point in that we need to be very careful that physical presence is not confused with engagement or productivity. I think that's really something that's a presumption, maybe based on our old traditional office culture, and that needs to be changed with training and a change management program. You need to start measuring output-based performance management, right? Instead of the number of days in the office, or how visible you are physically. So we definitely think this is a risk that some people may have these beliefs. And we're trying to discuss it, and if we see it happening, we call it out. We have the discussion, and I think it's also important to add, like, our leaders. It's very important that our leaders lead by example, because if all your executives are going to be coming in for 5 days a week, of course, nobody in your workforce is going to feel comfortable with working from home all the time. So it's really something that I think our leaders should be and are reflecting. If I look at our CHRO, he's very often working from home and needs to, and he only comes in if he really needs to. And I think that's a perfect example, and also encourages the organization to act accordingly.
Yeah, I also thought it was an interesting finding, because what I hear from clients, it seems to be the opposite of what the report was saying. So interesting to hear that you have the same thoughts on that. Another interesting question, which, by the way, will be dealt with in more detail by Alexander Milner-Smith in the final session of today, but still an interesting one to ask you. What do you think of companies that wish to monitor the activities of their employees while they are working remotely? For example, by using certain software to monitor the number of keystrokes on your keyboard. I guess I already know the answer, because you're already talking about trust being the core value of TomTom. But anyway, what do you say about this?
Yeah, for me, that goes against everything, our core values and the whole, the whole program. I also really think, you should ask yourself, does more keystrokes mean better work quality? Making more hours, does that lead to better output? Exactly. Indeed, what about employees who like to work outside of their core hours? And what is it going to do to your employee engagement? They have worked from home and proven themselves for the past year and a half. and then we start monitoring them in this way. I think for us, it's that's not how it would go. We would again encourage the manager to have output-based performance management, have the conversation on it. But I think control and management really diminishes creativity and trust makes people thrive.
Yeah, I thoroughly agree with you on that. I saw in the newspaper of last Monday, in the Dutch Financial Times, so to speak, a business anthropologist was being interviewed, Jiske Kramer, who said, and I quote, "There is a danger of a schism between people who want to go back to the office and those who would like to organize their work differently and work from home." Do you agree with her, or what are your thoughts on that?
Shall I take this one? I think that I do see that as a risk as well. Some people love working from home, some love working at the office. But we believe that we are accommodating both of these groups as we empower our employees with a choice where to work. And again, what's important is that our managers ensure that there's no value attached to either personal preference of where you work. And that's also why our trainings and the change management program is so important. We try to lead by example. And again, it takes time, but we also see it confirmed, for example, by the way our non-co-located teams are quickly adapting to the new concept because they were already working online before. And we see there a difference between non-co-located and co-located teams in the way they adapt to this concept.
Yeah. And what do you generally expect will be the long-term effect of the corona pandemic on international businesses, specifically in the field of where TomTom is active?
Yes. So in general, I think that remote and digital working have taken a flight and are here to stay in the tech industry like ours, but also in many more industries as well, I think. Looking at the demands in our talent pool, the expectations of the new generations, but also that newfound work-life balance for the existing generations. I expect this to be a structural change. And I also think that when working from home is no longer the mandatory and hybrid will be the new default, we will get better in it. And I also think that technology will evolve even more to enhance the hybrid experience.
Exactly. Yeah. And perhaps a final question to you both, but more a question of a personal nature. I already heard Lotte say a couple of things about it, but how is what changing your own working situation?
Yeah, for me, I have 3 kids at home. I have a commuting time of an hour and a half one way. And especially that is what makes me embrace this whole new concept. It saves me up to 15 hours a week, I think. For me personal, it's perfect.
What about you, Lotte?
Yeah, for me it's the same. Young children and just not having the commute saves me a lot of time, but also like now, if I have a spare minute, I can put in some laundry instead of doing everything at night. Still, frankly, I was a bit exhausted. Maybe that's natural for a young parent, but I feel that I can much better divide my work and my home situation. And as again, I really want to stress, like the office, coming now to the office because we are working from home also often, it really energizes me. Yeah, so it's also really great to have the combination.
Yeah. Thank you a lot for answering all these questions, for this very, very interesting insight of the concept of activity-based working. I am looking at the chat box and I see that a lot of interesting questions are coming in. Not precisely knowing how much time we have, let me select a couple.
Philip, I'm sorry, we are out of time, I'm afraid.
That's okay.
The next session is lined up, but perhaps if there's a way of your speakers responding to some of those questions, if possible, perhaps via use of Laboris, then that would be wonderful.
Sure.
Thank you. I don't know if you wanted to say anything else by way of closing.
No, I just wanted again to thank Lotte and Birgit, and I would like to thank everybody for listening and also for asking these questions. And hopefully we will be able to manage a way to get these questions answered. And last but not least, enjoy the rest of the day and all the sessions.
Well, thank you very much for Philip and Birgit and Lotte for that great discussion and for sharing your experience and insights on how to build a better, more resilient workforce for the future. I loved a lot of what you're saying about how you designed what, in particular, that your focus was on empowering employees with the flexibility to choose their work location depending on the activities that they're undertaking. It makes a lot of sense. And that you're driven by your core values around trust, care and simplicity in what you created. And that seems to have gone down really well with your employees. I also totally agree with you on not forcing employees to do things that normally harms engagement and that people do thrive by having a choice. So thank you once again.